We start right off the bat with the state treasurer of Arizona, Dean Martin. Martin is a statewide constitutional officer. He is third in line to the succession to the governor post. Mr. Martin oversees more than $12 billion in assets and said earlier this week that his state's coffers, well, you compared them to a piggy bank, Mr. Treasurer, and said it's empty. So Arizona obviously confronting a budget shortfall up to $1 billion for the current fiscal year, $2.5 billion for the next. Is that the worst case scenario or the best case scenario?
That's probably the best case scenario right now. The longer this current crisis lasts, the bigger impact it's going to be on our economy. And so right now we're looking at those numbers as good numbers. And if it gets much worse or lasts much longer, those numbers will only get larger.
Gets much worse. I mean, are you comforted at all? Well, first let me ask you, gets much worse. I mean, are you worried about not being able to pay state employees, for example?
Right now, we have enough money in the bank to cover operations. Cash flow is getting very tight, but we're not in a position where we need to do short-term borrowing. What we're worried about is this billion-dollar shortfall. The legislature and the governor have indicated they have no interest in going into special session to fix this crisis before the election. And as long as they're spending more than we're making in revenues, the longer this persists without a fix, the closer we're going to be to literally running out of cash. We're not off as bad as California, but we can get there very quickly.
How long do you think you have before you run out of cash?
Well, last year they were in the same situation. It was sometime in April that we were getting very close, and they finally fixed the budget with about 5 days left before we were literally out of cash. And so right now what we're looking at, we think we'll be able to get through this calendar year, but in the first part of next year we're going to start having cash flow issues if they don't bring down spending.
You said that the state was not in a good position to begin with going into the credit crunch. Are you relieved at all by any of the moves that the federal government is making, that the Federal Reserve is doing? I mean, it doesn't sound like any of that is changing your outlook at all.
Well, part of what we've got here with the Federal Reserve is they're going in and treating this in many ways like a hedge fund, or they're going to go in and buy up some of the assets. You know, that's good if you have an investment problem. We've really got a confidence problem, and I would like to see them do a little more insurance. If they would go in and, 90% of Americans are still paying their mortgage. If they would go in and insure those mortgages, I think it would provide a lot more confidence to us as institutional investors, as well as other financial institutions, to start trading in those securities again. And if they do that, that gets the confidence back. I mean, what we're going through in the financial markets is like what we went through in the Tylenol scare in the early 80s. Nobody wants to touch, these poison pills, and it's just locked up the whole market.
Mr. Treasurer, this is a bit of a loaded question, but as a state entity, do you feel at a disadvantage in receiving help from the federal government than if you were a Wall Street firm?
Oh, of course. In fact, Arizona's a long way from Wall Street. And, during the last month, we've been talking to Treasury saying, you're providing insurance for the private money market accounts, and they would not even listen to our request to provide the same type of insurance for government money market accounts. We run a portfolio for 140 local governments here in Arizona, and we want to, just like other money market funds, we're being pinched by this tightening of the credit area, and we don't want to create a run for local governments and put their dollars at risk. But it seems like, the federal government's not as much interested in the state and local impact. Maybe we'll get their attention here now.
If the federal government is not interested, I mean, what choice do you have then? I'm saying besides raising taxes, besides cutting your budget, I mean, are you going to bankers kind of hat in hand saying, what kind of terms can you give us?
We're not there yet. What we've been doing, to the extent we can on the Treasury level, is tightening up the portfolio. We've moved considerably towards U.S. Treasuries and GSEs to protect ourselves from everything that's going on in the credit markets. But with a large $12 billion portfolio, that's not easy or quick to do. We're not in that position yet. But if either things don't improve or spending isn't reduced or new revenues found, we're in a situation where this time next year we're definitely going to be in a very tight bind. So we're looking at this next fiscal year as being probably the tightest fiscal year for states. And again, the economy goes today, tomorrow goes the state revenues, because revenues always lag. And so we're looking ahead towards tomorrow, trying to prepare for this hurricane that's bearing down on us.
So what's the solution then? I mean, do you have to look at the budget? I mean, are you considering cutting, I don't know what's on the table, I mean, road work, schools, hospitals? I mean, what kind of projects are you looking at now that you think, okay, they may even have to be canceled or they have to be delayed?
Well, one of the problems we had over the last 2 years is we warned the legislature and the governor that we had a revenue shortfall coming, that a slowdown was imminent, and they didn't listen. They continued to grow the budget by $1 billion last year and $1 billion this year. What we really need to do is say, oops, they made a mistake, the money's not going to be here, and delay those spending increases. We don't really need to cut, we just need to not do those increases quite so quickly.
All right. We thank you very much, Mr. Treasurer. That is the State Treasurer of Arizona, Dean Martin.